Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Big Picture. I'm Jeannie Purtle for Historic Sotterley. I'm coming to you from my home in Lexington Park, Maryland. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our regulars. And if you're new, please identify yourself. You can, this is interactive, so you can talk to each other in the comments. You can introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, ask questions. Hi, Meredith. If you have a question that might be too complicated for this format, my email is always education@sotterley.org. Hi. Hello. How are you? Welcome, everybody. So, also, I wanted to say, check our website for any upcoming events. We do have some events coming up in August, some virtual events, and our site is open almost every day of the week. We do guided tours Friday, Saturday, and Sunday right now. But our site is a great place to walk. You can see the signage, you can see the exhibits. So come visit us soon, okay? Hi, Jerome. Hi, Nick. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but I see Nick Angie. Okay, so sometime I'll have you pronounce it for me. Come see me. So it may be a name just for, but I apologize if I mispronounced it. Jane, thank you for joining us. Welcome. So today I'm going to talk about family reunions, and I'm going to spend some time not just hi. I'm going to spend some time talking about why family reunions enrich our lives. I am going to talk about a little bit about the nuts and bolts of family reunions, but you know me, I'm the people historian, so I'm all about how it affects the people, right? So that's what I'm going to cover. But I will give you some, and I got a little tip from one of the descendants that emailed me earlier that I'll share. Okay? So let's get started. So family reunions. It's a time of getting reacquainted with relatives you've lost touch with, or not seen in a while, or never met before. I know that the family reunions that I've attended, maybe I haven't seen my cousins in years. I haven't met their children. Now I might see them on Facebook, but I've never met them in person. It's a time of getting reacquainted that you've lost touch with. Maybe you don't know their address, or they moved and you lost touch. So it's a great time for that. Why is it important? Family reunions give us a sense of belonging. We see the big picture of our family, how we fit into it, how it has persevered through time. So we don't feel as alone in the world. It gives us a sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. Hi, Jerry. So we are, it enriches our lives in that way. I know for personal experience from family reunions I've been to, it helps me see, you know, family members from my extended family that maybe I haven't seen since I was a child. I know the last one I went to was the year before COVID. I took my dad to what they call Myrtle Days. It's a kind of a big community gathering. And so I ran into my one of my cousins, my cousin's kids, my cousin's wife, that I hadn't seen in years. And a woman walked up to me, and I knew who she was, but she was looking at me like she knew me, but I know that she thought I looked like my mother, but it was my great aunt on my mother's father's side. And I hadn't, you know, she has passed away since then, I do believe, but or she's you know, she may be the last sibling of my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. But I knew she thought she knew me, because I am always told I resemble my mother. So you know, I don't think she realized I was Betty's daughter, but she knew me. But I ran into her, and I figured out that my cousin that I met there, you know, got reacquainted with there, their granddaughter, my great aunt, is also her grandmother. So she's related to me on both sides of the family, my cousin's granddaughter. So you find out all of these things. You see people that you hadn't seen in years. You go back to places where your ancestors lived, and it just gives you a sense of belonging, and gives you a place in this wider big picture. And also, too, you see branches of the family, maybe that at some point they lost touch. I know in my own family, my great-grandmother, she was raised by a different family, as her mother, my great-great-grandmother, died the year she was born. And her father moved off, married again. I don't even know if she saw her father again, but he has a whole nother family in a different part of the country. So I have all of those relatives, but finding out, you know, seeing, you know, finding out those kind of stories. You know, the story we always heard about great grandma, you know, how she got dropped off on the doorstep. You know, what is her story? What do you know about that? Is that true? There's got to be more to that story. But so you find out, and we've had that happen here. There's branches of the Scriber family that they, you know, we have branches that stayed in St. Mary's County, some that moved off, and you know, those branches eventually separate, and you lose touch with that whole side of your family. And so it just gives us a sense of we're not alone, and we have a space in our family, we have a rich history, and it gives us a time to share. Also, a big part of this is storytelling. And this is my favorite part. So storytelling, we hear stories of our common ancestors. We verify stories. We share trees, family trees, and documents, pictures. We see resemblances. I have second and third cousins that, I can tell what family member they resemble. Some of them, you know, my children and my cousin's children could look like siblings. They really resemble each other. So those kinds of things are really neat. We see the miracle of human DNA, you know, traits, mannerisms, listening to the stories, the way it used to be, the griots, the griots, the family storytelling. That is priceless, and it's especially good for young people to hear these kind of stories. And maybe you go back. Hi, Kathy. Speak of a cousin. Kathy Clark Hunt is my cousin. So hi, Kathy. Good to see you virtually. Good. It gives me an excuse to talk about some of our family reunions. So storytelling, so important. I know Kathy's father, my uncle, who was married to my father's sister, was a master storyteller, wasn't he, Kathy? He could tell the greatest yarns, and it was usually funny stories of things they did when they were young, and you learn about how things used to be back in the day, and it just explains a lot about the culture you came from and the people you came from. It's so important to listen to these stories because, and also important to take down some of these stories in written form and recordings, because these stories in these people, unfortunately people do not live forever, and it's important to take these down. So thank you for joining me, Kathy. That's so cool. And Kathy's actually been to Sotterley too before with her sister, so that's also cool. It's been a long time ago, but she has been here. So listening to those stories, the traits, looking at traits and manners, it gives us a sense of belonging. It gives us a new, renewed sense of purpose in the world. So, we see people, like to see my father, see people at a reunion that, he recognizes people from his childhood, or he grew up with these people in the same community. It's really a joy to see their joy. So these kinds of events and these kinds of gatherings is very important. And I still love to go back. Down home is what my parents used to call it, which is Oregon County, Missouri. And that was always considered down home. And, sometimes I still meet, when I go down there, I meet cousins, I meet people whose last names I've heard all my life, but I can now put a family or a face to it. So it's really important. And also, it brings us back to a place of our roots, and a sense of place over time. There's a real importance in realizing that the landscape, the community didn't always look this way. Things have happened to the community. Businesses have moved out, or it used to be, if you listen to my parents talk about this little village called Myrtle, you would think it was the hoppinest town in the world. It was, to them, of course, they're two, they have a different perspective. They're two white teenagers, right, growing up in the 50s. So their perspective of the 50s may be different than your perspective. But if you listen to them talk, you would think it was the busiest, happiest place in the whole wide world. And we go there now and we go, what, this place? So and that's a lot of places in St. Mary's County are like that. They have a lot of Facebook groups that I belong to just because I'm nosy. A lot of times I want to find out about our history around here, and I want to connect to people, so they allow me to butt into some of their business, but learning that where I live now and how it changed what it used to be. It explains so much about my community and the people in it. So this is really important. This sense of place, the sense of roots, the sense of storytelling, the sense of belonging. So I know that you all have your own stories, and chime in if you have any enlightenment in family reunions and how important they are. So we're going to tomorrow at work. We're supposed to we've had a storm, and how it always happens at Sotterley when we're about to do a big event, but we're going to have a Sotterley reunion. So Herbert Sotterley owned Sotterley. Remember, Sotterley is a name, Sotterley is a place. Okay, Sotterley is named for Sotterley in Suffolk, England. Herbert Sotterley also was connected to the Plater family, and his ancestors came from Sotterley in Suffolk. But he was married to J.P. Morgan's oldest daughter, so he was part of the ultra wealthy in New York in the early 20th century. And he came down here because he heard about it. His cousin, Henry Yates Sotterley, and I've also checked this story out. It's not just a story, it's true. So Henry Yates Sotterley was the bishop of the diocese of the Episcopalian diocese, and he visited St. Andrew's Church, and if you in the early like 1901, 1902. So if he was here then, he would also have met a lot of the Briscoe descendants that were still living at that time, because they attended church at St. Andrew's. That's right here it's a historic Episcopal church right here in our county. So if Henry Yates Sotterley came a couple of years and did services there, he would have met all those people. And if you want to see grave sites of Briscoes, that's where most of them are buried, right there in front of the sanctuary. So he would have met these descendants, and that's where he first heard about Sotterley. So Henry told his cousin, Herbert Sotterley in New York, who was wealthy, about Sotterley. And by 1906, he was visiting with his wife, Louisa. And by 1910, he bought Sotterley. So, that family connection, drove our history. And it's very important. And these stories are important in that, how, I always ask, how did these people get here? So tomorrow, when I'm talking to the Plater descendants, it's Plater descendants that are coming tomorrow, or Sotterley descendants. But Herbert Sotterley, I have Plater descendants coming the week after next, but it's just two of them, so I get them confused sometimes too. So the Sotterley reunion is tomorrow, but the Sotterleys are very interested in Plater history. So one of the things I like to bring out is some of the women that people don't talk about as much. You know, they're always usually focused on the male, the famous ones that had power and all that. But I like to talk about the women a lot of times, like Rebecca Tasker Addison, who had 47 grandchildren, and she was the mother of all of the platers at Sotterley. So, you know, those kinds of things. And Emmeline, and how did she get here? Just like my own great-grandmother on my mother's side. You know, how did she end up being with this family? What happened? There's something that happened, you know, that we can't explain. So I want to learn what that was. So you can find out all kinds of cool information when you get together with some of your relatives, because you can piece together your information. So the sense of place, like places like Sotterley, places like, you know, where my parents grew up, brings us back to a place of our roots, gives us a sense of place over time. We can celebrate our family. We listen. Sometimes it heals hurts and creates understanding. So sometimes we get, somehow we don't understand what happened and it's hurtful. But then if we understand it, maybe we can see from someone else's perspective and understand a little bit more, and it eases some of our pain. So that is really good. You know, why did this happen in my family? It explains more of who we are. Okay. One thing that you need to keep in mind too is you need to always thank the people in your family who spend their time and effort organizing such events. Okay? This is no small task. I know that all the events and things that I've been to for family reunions, it takes a person to make it their business to carry this out. And Catherine Humphreys, who's the Sotterley icon you're seeing, she just put a resource out, and this is Family Tree Magazine, and it gives you a little hints about planning a family reunion. But they usually, you have to plan this probably 2 or 3 years in advance, because people need a whole year to know about it so they can plan to be there. They might have to raise the money for their fare or the fees, plan vacation, plan time off, plan their travel. So it takes a lot of planning ahead of time to pull anything like this off. And I like the 10 steps because sometimes it's a thankless job to plan things like this. It takes years. It takes constant communication, RSVPs, which people are terrible about those these days. Arrangements. And so one of the tips is you want to, if you decide this is what I want to do, to plan it, you get other family compadres that are going to take on different aspects of the job. It's very hard to do this by yourself. Don't even try. You need other people in your family that take on some aspect of the work, like their response. So you delegate, right? This is your job for the family reunion, and always be that person, that you're going to lend a helping hand somehow, even if it's just answering promptly. That helps. People like to know when you're coming, if you're coming. They have to plan. So, and some of the work, like making your, you might, lodging might be in a local hotel or something in the area where you're going. So it's up to you. They might block off some rooms, but it's up to you to make the booking, right? They're not going to do it for you. You should never expect them to pay for you. That's not their job. You have to take care of that. They're into the planning. So it's not often easy. One of the suggestions is to send out a survey and ask family members what they would like to see. I agree with that. I agree that you need to get a feel. People really like to feel like they're involved somehow, but you have to, when you're planning something, there has to be some kind of action done. So just saying this is what you want and not helping to get it done is not going to cut it, I should say. So, this is a bad habit some people have is, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Well, you didn't. So make sure that you're courteous and recognize those people that actually put these things together. Give them a helping hand. Ask think about what you can do well and what you're willing to do and offer a helping hand. It's not easy, and you're never going to get your own way, okay? It's a big group. So, there might be an aspect of the reunion that you don't like. Try to keep it to yourself. I mean, try to put yourself in other shoes. It was a big job. It was all volunteer. They're not getting paid for this. They're looking out for your welfare. They're trying to do something really good for you, and your family. So try to be generous, okay? Offer them thanks. Offer them help. Share the workload. Take on a small task. Any task you take on is going to be okay. An in-person reunion is important, and now that COVID is over, that's going to start happening more. Like tomorrow, we're having a Sotterley reunion on site. An in-person reunion is important because of the sense of place. They're already connected to the place they're going to be. So that adds even more power if you can do that. Now we have virtual family groups and organizations and communities, and we can do Zoom, which is also good. That is something that was vital, and sometimes that's the only way some people can join. Sometimes you could do a hybrid. One thing you can do to also is be generous to others about your research. If you have research, share it. Respect the stories that you hear. Respect the people that you hear these stories from. One thing I always hear when I'm hearing from writers give advice and people that are publishing, you never write or publish for revenge, to air, for revenge of some sort. Like, I'm mad at my stepmother, so I'm going to write a book about her, and make her the evil person. No. So they always advise against that. So I don't even think that's ethical. So you want to respect people's stories, and people's stories are people's stories. Will they get every date right? No. Will some of it be a yarn that is really probably elaborated and fabricated? Probably. You will hear those, but that's okay. That's okay. That's what other research is for, matching up to those stories. So don't be too hard. And it's people's memories. People remember different things. And as people age, people remember things differently. I do it here. Like a while ago, I couldn't get Satterley and Plater straightened out. So I know that in some of these things, I've said the wrong name at some point. It's not that I don't know it. It's just that some things come out of your mouth at the moment, but it might be inaccurate at the time. So that's what other research is for. You can always go back and fact check if you want. But be generous and be kind and be respectful of people's stories. But also, yarns are okay, but it's okay to tell the truth too. We're all flawed, and that's something that we need to remember when we're recounting history or our family stories. I don't prefer to have the fluffed up perfect version, okay, because in my heart I know that's not true. Everybody has problems. Everybody is flawed. All generations have made mistakes. Every generation has made the wrong choices in their lives. So, even the wrong moral choices. But I would prefer to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, because I think that makes people real. If it's all the noble stories that they were, one of the best things I love is when my father gets real, and he gets more real as he gets older. One time he just blurted out, my grandpa, I never heard him say a kind word to his wife. He never said that to me before in his life. But he said it to me, and that gave me a lot of insight. I said, wow. And he tells this story about his grandpa, just walking off and having, leaving his grandma, and she had to chase him, to catch up. It's like, he had never said that to me in his whole life. But it gave me such a window into that generation and into life there. I never heard it before, but all of a sudden he blurted this out, and it makes so much sense. So sometimes the older the people get, the realer they get, and you get little gems like that. And I think that is so important, to know how people really were, and without being disrespectful and mean, of course. But that's not what he meant, he was telling the truth. This is how my great grandfather treated his wife. He was just blurting it out just like that. So I love those kinds of moments, and that's what you get in some of these family reunions. One thing, before I close today, I wanted to share something. Trudy Telefero, who is, she's a regular here, and many people know her. She lives out in California, but she's on the descendants list of Sotterley, and she's really involved, and she's just a dynamo. She just promotes Sotterley all over the place, but Trudy sent me an email, said she couldn't join us, but she said, Trudy says, mention this important stuff, okay? Okay, so I promised that I would, okay? She said, mention the importance of available family photocopies and taking a video recording of sessions if possible. Also, games and prizes for kids and adults was a big hit and makes lasting impressions. So somehow she had, at their family reunion, she had prizes for the kids and adults, and I think they had try to answer family questions or something like that. But she wanted me to tell you that that was a big hit at their family reunion, and what she wanted me to share that. So she'll see this recording later. But she always has good ideas, and she knows how to put on something, I can tell you. So take that. And so family photos. Kathy, my cousin who has joined us, her mother, my aunt, my dad's sister, she was great about that. When my grandparents passed away, when they both passed away, my aunt took a lot of the pictures from my family that she had, because she's the daughter. A lot of, you know, that the daughters oftentimes are the keepers of the history, right? And if you look for family photographs, look at, you know, if you're doing your family tree and you're on there and looking for photographs, look at the aunts, okay? Look at all the aunts, look at all the women in the family, and you might find some photographs that are online. But my Aunt Naomi was really good about, she took all of my grandparents' photos, and sometimes people don't live, you know, they say they take things, but they don't always follow through. But she did. It was such a godsend. She made sure we had copies, and not just my parents either, but all of us grandkids too. We got copies of some of my grandparents' photographs. I still have them. I still have the copies. I have photocopies. Now I have digital copies. So I can't tell you how important that was, and how now I'm passing them on to my grandchildren. I have a picture that I can put up. I can put on, you know, the wall and say this, I can give this to my granddaughters and grandson and say, this was your great-great-grandparents when they got married. I mean, how important is that? That is so priceless. And now there's ways, you know, that you can, get all your videos, change formats. I know I did that. Back in the day, I kind of stole all my parents, reels, in the old projector, and I took them and had a VHS done for everybody. But now I had to do that again. I took the VHS and had it done in a DVD. So I have it where the file they can access, but now I need to get the DVDs copied so they can actually have their own copy. But those kinds of things are priceless. Now, my grandchildren can see all of their, their great-grandparents' family. And my grandparents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents when they were young. Their grandmother when she was a baby. So I can't tell you how important those things are. And your family will bless you for it. That just like I feel blessed, the people that share with me. So really, yes, Jerome, the telling the whole full story is so important. It is. And I do believe that. So, it explains a lot about our family too, because these dynamics are passed on through the generations, good and bad. So it helps to understand, what happened and how we became where we are. Why am I here? How did I get here? How did my family get here? What happened? Why did my great-grandparents move? And I call that migration for work. A lot of my ancestors moved to Missouri from Alabama, Mississippi, because and those borders are really fluid during a certain time period, so it changes Mississippi, Alabama all the time. So most of them migrated for work. The story was they were trying to get away from the Civil War. That's really not true. They were migrating for work, for land, so there's a whole group of my ancestors that later married each other, and became part of my extended family that moved from there to Missouri. My grandmother was born in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, but her family, the Langstons, were in Oklahoma. She had family in Oklahoma when she moved to Oklahoma already. And then they migrated back to Missouri, where she had her children. We have this whole Grapes of Wrath story where the Langstons were moving out to California. My grandfather and my grandmother were going too, but for some reason my grandma and grandpa decided to turn back to Missouri. Thus, I have all these relatives out in California, but somehow we were back in Missouri. How did that happen? Well, it changed the trajectory of my history, those kinds of decisions. And that's what you learn in these family reunions. So I encourage you to have them, whether you have them every year or you have them every 5 years. Take it on yourself to help plan one. And those that have the wherewithal to plan it for your family, help them. Take on a job, thank them, because they're doing you a great service. So that's really all I had for today, and thank you, everybody. Donna, I'm sorry Robert, Christine, I'm sorry if I missed anybody's name, but I always go back and look at all the comments and everything after I'm finished. So you can also see this recording once I post it on our website if you missed anything or you want to go back. So thank you so much. I appreciate your support, and thank you for supporting Historic Sotterley, and I will see you next week, Lord willing, Thursday at 2 p.m. Okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.